Hello, my name is Russell Flores, and today I'll be doing an overview of the board game Tally Ho. First off, just want to thank the folks that are watching this. Most likely you're doing some playtesting and providing feedback on my board game I'm designing. So thank you for your time, thanks for reviewing it, and I appreciate it. First I'm going to start by going over, there's 4 major components that we're going to go over, and I have the instructions on my phone to make sure I don't miss anything. The first one being the shared board. So as I open this up, we'll pull stuff out. So the primary board is called the shared board, and we're going to do a deep dive into this a little later. But this is where all the action spaces are going to live. The ship completion track is all going to live on this. We've also tried to design the board, and so all the pieces that you're utilizing fit on this board or another board. Everything should just fit on the board. So that's what this is. We also have our player boards, and there's 4 colors for 4 different players, and this is where all your personal items will fit on the board. Again, the approach was every piece and every component has a spot somewhere, and very little should actually be stored on the table itself. And then lastly, we have all the game components, and so there's 5 major resources. There's raw wood, finished wood, raw metal, finished metal, and then gold or money. And so that's what most of this is here. We also have dice, and so the dice, there's 4 dice. They play with the cards themselves, and so the tools, and I'll get into the cards to know what dice you roll, but this is how you know if you succeed with the dice roll or not, and what dice you roll. And then we have the meeples, the workers themselves, and you'll notice there's 2 different sizes. There's the bigger ones, which are the shipwrights that ignore worker placements, and then there's also the smaller ones, which we're calling apprentices, that have to follow the worker placement, and only 1 worker per action space allowed. Besides shipwrights, ignore that and you can place as many as you want. This is a similar mechanism you'd see in viniculture, where they have, I think, the jumbo worker or the grande worker, I believe, that does the similar mechanism. And then lastly, you have the tool cards, and these are the tools themselves that be on the marketplace, which I'll go over this in a few moments as well. These are the tools that you're buying, that then you use those tools to either process material or build your ship, part of the ship completion track. Alrighty, so I'm going to start with the shared board, and I'm going to be going over what's on this board and what each thing means. So like I mentioned earlier, all of your worker placement actions will be on this board, and this is where you're going to put your meeples, your workers, to do that action. This banner that you see for tool market, sawmill, woodworking workshop, the metal foundry, the shipyard, building upgrades, and shipyard jobs, the banner itself is what identifies it as an action space for a meeple to be placed. And again, an important worker placement role is 1 worker per action is allowed, besides the shipwrights that ignore worker placements, and so you can have as many shipwrights on an action space as you would like. The only caveat to this is the shipyard jobs. You can see that's broken up into 2 halves of an action. You got your +2 action, so you get 2 golds for the first worker there, or +1 for any additional workers. And again, shipwrights ignore that, so shipwrights can always get +2 if you're using your shipwright to perform this action. Any apprentices would first one would get 2, any other ones would get +1. And so I will start by setting up the board, and as I set it up, I will be explaining the action. So I'm going to start with raw wood, and so raw wood is found at the sawmill, and this is where you're going to go to get your raw wood. You'll also see for the sawmill and the metal foundry, there is a little card here, which is a starting card, and then this can be upgraded as the game goes, and that's what we'll get to in a minute through the building upgrade steps. But initially, it has a max of 8 and a replenishment rate of 1, and when you go there, you get +1 raw wood. And so to set this game up, I'm going to be setting up the max, which is 8. 6, 8, and so that's how it's set up. If I placed a worker here, I would get the 1 for now, and at the end of the round, when we do end of the round replenishment, 1 more would go there. And so there's some supply and demand on both the metal depot and the sawmill to make them more valuable, less valuable, depending how many are there and what is the current replenishment rate. So I got that set up. Once you set up the raw wood, the rest of them that comes with the game do go on the side of the table. It's one of the few things that we're putting off to the side, and I'm just putting it right off camera here. Let me put it in front so you guys can see it a little bit. And then the next one I'll go into is the raw metal, which works the same way as raw wood. There is a max of 6 allowed on the first metal depot. And so I will be placing the 6 there, and then the rest of them, but just put it off the table here, off to the side. All right, since we talked about the metal depot and raw wood, I will switch gears to the building upgrades because it goes hand in hand. And so in the tool deck, or mixing with the tool deck, there's separate cards that are separate sizes. And you can see there's 3 wood ones and 3 metal ones. You do want to keep them in order because you do have to upgrade in order. And you'll see there's 2 sides of it. One side looks identical to what's on the board, and then the other side looks different, and that has the cost. That's the side we want to have faced up. So we got them in order. Sawmill upgrades go there, woodworking upgrades go there, 1 through 3. And everything you need to see to do a building upgrade is on the card itself, on this side. So if I look at the sawmill upgrade, it says refill the timber yard to max capacity and take 3 gold and 2 raw wood with the cost of 8. So if anyone wanted to use their action to do the building upgrade, they would spend 8 gold, and there's a unique rule in this game for building upgrades. You can do it individually, or you can do it as a table, or just 2 people at the table. You can pick who wants to invest in building that, upgrading that sawmill. It would benefit the whole table, because once it's upgraded, it now will, when you place it down, you face this side over top of this, and now there's a max of 8. And every time you'd go, you get +2 raw wood versus +1, and your replenishment rate jumps up to 2 versus the 1. And it keeps getting better and better as you progress. But so it benefits the table, so the cost can be spread across the table. The one thing the table is going to have to figure out, as whoever upgrades it or the jointly upgrade it, is you get to refill it to the max capacity, which is the new max capacity of 10. But you also take 3 gold and 2 raw wood. So if one person upgrades it by themselves, it's easy. They would just take the 3 gold and the 2 raw wood back. They'd get that part of the action of upgrading. If 2 people, for instance, upgraded, they would figure out how do they split the 3 gold or the 2 raw wood. So there'd be a little negotiation to go there. If it's 3 people, same thing. And it doesn't have to be equal parts. So this one costs 8. For example, I could spend 5 of my gold to upgrade it, and player over here could spend 3 of theirs, and we'd upgrade it for 8. And then we just negotiate that I spent my 5, so I really want the 2 raw wood, and I'll take 2 raw wood and 1 gold, and that individual will take 2 gold, for example. But you'd have to negotiate that amongst the people that actually invested in the upgrade. So the metal depot upgrades work the same way. They cost a little more. This one costs 10, and you would get 4 gold and 2 raw metal. Same thing. It can be done as a table. You'd pick how you spread the reward out. All right, I'm going to move over to the wood workshop. And so the wood workshop deals with finished wood. And the finished wood all gets spread out in that space. And so you can do it as neatly as you'd like. The main thing is you want to be able to see is the banner, so you can see how many workers are there. You kind of spread out your finished wood there. And so they'll say wood workshop, use tool to assemble. And so anywhere you see a D on the board, that represents dice. So that indicates you must be rolling some type of dice to perform this action. So I'll get into tool cards here in a moment, but just know wood workshop, metal foundry, anytime you're converting raw wood, or when you see that D there, you'll be using your tools to do so. And so we'll get to the board and the cards when we get there, but I'll explain that. But you'll be using your tools that are on your player boards to roll dice, indicate if you succeed or not succeed, and what quality, and you'll be converting your raw material into finished material. So same thing with metal foundry. I'm just going to place the finished metal there. And same thing, you'll be the D's there, so you'll be using your tools and your player boards to convert that when you use that space. We also have our gold, our money, which goes up here in the money slot. So we'll place that there. Okay, now to the tool market. And so you see where the cards get placed, the different slots we have in the discard pile. So you'll shuffle up your tool market up, and you will then deal out the cards, and this is the tool market. This is a mechanism that's pretty similar to Lost Ruins of Arnak, where the market every round slides over into the discard pile, or if anyone buys a tool, you then slide everything over and reveal the next card, and then there's a discard pile on this side. So while we talk about the tool market, I'll explain the tools themselves. And by doing that, I think the easiest way is to show you the actual player boards. There's 4 different types of tools, which are indicated by the little banner that you see on the corner there. And so the first one is your joiner's mallet, which is your assembly tool. Assembly tools only get used when you're at the shipyard to conduct your shipyard jobs, or excuse me, your shipyard to actually build your ship components, which we'll talk through. The next one is your blacksmith hammer, and that is your metalworking tool, which will only be used at the metal foundry, and that's again to convert your raw metal into finished metal. Your next one down is your woodworking tool, which again is used only at your sawmill to convert your raw wood into finished wood. And then the last one is a combination tool, which you start off with a broken hand rasp, which has no effect because it's broken, but it's there as a placeholder. And that can be used at either the metal foundry or the wood workshop. So it's a combination tool. It can be used on wood or metal. And so you'll see that there. That's what the banners and the different types of cards represent. As you go down, you see a number right below, and you start with 0, and that's how many points. It talks about that's the tier level of the card, but at the end of the game, that's the points as well of what that card is worth. And as you go through the game and you're upgrading and downgrading cards, you're keeping them in a pile, and at the end of the game, you'll count it. Similar to in Wingspan, how you count tuck cards at the end of the game, same thing. The whole stack is worth points, not just the top card. And so there's advantages of downgrading, upgrading to get as many cards in that stack as possible. So at the end of the game, when you do your scoring, you count all those up. The next icon down is your dice, and that is indicating what dice you are going to roll. And so you start off with all 4-sided dice. And so if you have a 4-sided assembly tool, all these are 4-sided dice. If you go to any of the 3 actions that require a dice roll or using your tools, you will then roll that dice. And on the player aid, it talks about the dice outcomes. So a 1 is always bad. A 1 means it's a failure, and you are going to lose a raw material of your choice, whatever you're trying to convert. If you're trying to convert at the metal foundry, you must lose a raw metal. Same thing if you're trying to convert at the wood workshop, you must lose one of your raw woods. If you're at the shipyard and actually trying to assemble your boat, your ship, you'll get to choose what material you're going to lose. In this case, it could be not raw material, it could be finished material. So if you're trying to do the oak hole, you still have assembly tool that has a 4, the joiner's mallet, and you roll a 1, you will lose one of the 3 finished woods. At the same time, 2 to 5 is a normal succeed, so it just happens as normal. The action is performed as normal. And then a 6 or above is an exceptional quality, and that's where you gained an extra finished material or an extra gold if you're assembling. So let's just use, for instance, you are doing a woodworking action using a woodworking tool. Let's say you have an upgraded woodworking tool that allows you to roll a 6-sided dice. You roll a 6. You would then, instead of getting 1, instead of changing 1 of these raw woods into 1 finished, you would change 1 raw wood into 2 finished. You're getting the additional output. Same thing would happen for metal, and then for the shipyard, you were just gaining an extra gold that you would previously get, and I'll explain that in more detail as I go over the ship completion track. As you go further down, you are going to see a red icon. That indicates the cost of it. That's mainly important as you're looking at the market. As you're glancing down, you can see this one costs 3, this costs 4. That is the cost. Anything in green, the green plus, is the upgrade. That's a positive thing going to happen. You gain your upgrade when you buy a new card from the market and you place it on top of. And once you place it on top, you're gaining the upgrade that's listed on the card you're covering up. This mechanic is supposed to represent you disassembling your old tool to get raw materials since you've upgraded it, or an assembly card, you get gold back, you're selling your tool. So it's all about recycling your tools and you're gaining some type of material because you recycled it. You can upgrade and downgrade different tiers based on your need, and it's a good strategy of gaining different raw materials along the way as you gain more points. So that covers the card. Each card is a unique card, and it does have a little details on what that card actually represents and does part of the shipbuilding process historically, which is neat. While we're on the player aids, you can also see there's spots for you to store your material, and so just keep yourself organized as you're playing the game. And then a lot of stuff I just talked through is in the player aid. We try to include everything we thought was important as you're playing to be incorporated on the side of the board. All right, I will then go into the ship completion track, and this is kind of one of the major parts of the game. That's you building your ship. And so the first thing I'll do is just get this thing set up real quick. And so I'm pulling out the different workers out here, and you can see the game talks about everyone starts with one shipwright and one apprentice. And so if I was green, I'd get these two here. But also you see there's more that come in the bag, and that is to be placed on the ship completion track. And so this is similar to what you see like Lost Ruins of Arnak, where as you're upgrading through the ship completion track, you get the upgrades on the side. And so I'll put one of my apprentices here and one of my shipwrights here, and there's a little icon that kind of makes it clear that's where they go at the start of the game. And as you make it up to that, you would get an extra apprentice here once you do the lead ballast. And then once you get to the bulkheads, you change out, you trade. So you're not getting 4 workers, you're only 3 max, but you would trade one of your apprentices out for a shipwright. So your apprentices have been upgraded to a shipwright, and from bulkheads on up, you will be playing the game with 2 shipwrights and 1 apprentice. Everything else you see on it, you're going to see kind of the cost and being a picture of the cost. And so all these pictures is the cost to actually play or to assemble that piece. And again, to actually use that action, you have to place a worker on the shipyard. And that's when you're going to use your assembly tool that's on your player mat to then try to satisfy the ask. And so if I was doing lead ballast, I would pay 2 raw metal, 2 raw wood. I have to have a worker there, and I would roll my dice to see if I succeed or not. So if I still haven't upgraded my assembly tool, I will be rolling a 4-sided dice. You can use a dice tower to make this process a little easier. Chuck it in the back there. Oops. There we go, if I can get it set up right. Chuck it in the top there, and it comes out, and I got let's see what I got, a 3. And so I would have succeeded, and so I would be able to take my 2 raw wood and my finished wood from my player mat, put it back in the supply, not back into the sawmill, because again, this is supply and demand, but my raw materials go back to supply here, and then if I was doing finished wood later, it would go back right here in the different wood workshop and metal foundry. And then I would take, every person has 9 discs that match their color. You would then fill it in here as you work your way up, and you would get the gold icon that's listed there. You'd get that back as a reward. So I'd get the 1 back because I succeeded. This is also, that is the gold you get back once you complete the ship, but also at the end of the game, you're going to be counting those up as points too, as part of in the round scoring. So as you go up, you see there's multiple different paths. They're worth different gold or money that you get back, but also they're worth different points at the end of the game, but they all cost something differently. So if you would get a 6 or higher when you're doing your assembly action, that is where that one now, you get one additional, you get 2, or if you're doing bulkheads, this gives you 4 gold, you get 5 gold. You get 1 more than you were supposed to get because you had exceptional quality of that assembly. As you can see too on the ship completion track, there is different spaces that indicate how many players can actually be there, and that's why the tokens are important as you move up. And so you can block people as they move up and get there first. And so, and as you move up, this was like this. Let's just do a, for instance here, like blue could not go to get the American elm hole because they'd be blocked. There's only 2 spites there, so they'd be forced to get the teak hole. And so they'd have to move this way and look for the different resources that are required there. And you keep that up, and at the end of the game, you would then count, you'd go backwards and count each of these gold things are worth points. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's important to name or to call out on it. I'll call it out too. You'll see you can't just pick any one you want to go through. It has to make sense through the path. And so if you go teak hole, or teak keel, excuse me, you can only go teak hole or American elm. You couldn't go oak hole because that's on the other side and your spaces doesn't connect. So it is kind of like a maze. You have to work yourself up. And as you move up, you're limiting kind of what your future upgrades look like. And so you have to be planning ahead a little bit on what kind of boat and ship you're trying to build, and make sure you navigate the correct maze to get that. All right, so I'm gonna now set up a game and then do a few rounds and explain how that works. Okay, so I set up a 2-player game, and I'm just gonna be talking through the first few rounds, and then I'll skip ahead and maybe walk through a round or two when you're more in the middle of the game. A couple things I didn't call out initially. Each player starts with 3 gold, and so you can see I'm playing a 2-player game with blue and green. I have the 9 chips here for the ship completion track. You start with 3 gold. I just put it up to the top there. They start with their 1 shipwright and 1 apprentice on both of them. And so you can see that, got the market laid out. And so again, and the other thing I didn't call out is the first player token. The 2 games I have for playtesting, they don't come with a first player token. I stole this one out of my Lost Ruins of Arnok, and so just for now, take one out of another game and or use a coin or anything you have laying around as your first player token. The rules state the last player to step foot on a boat goes first, and so we're going to say that's blue, and so blue is going to go first. Because blue's going first, it's always going to try to use the apprentice first because they don't be blocked by anything. Everything's wide open now, so you wouldn't use your shipwright at this point because it can ignore anything, so you can do anything you want with that guy. And so in the first round, there's a few things you needed to consider. The ultimate job of the game is to build your ship. And so the first thing everyone's going after is the lead ballast, which is 2 raw wood and 2 raw metal. And so that's what you're trying to achieve initially to get that. But there's a few things you can consider. You can go to the metal depot to get your raw metal if you would like, and that's a good strategy to go there. You can go to the sawmill to get the wood first, another good strategy there. The other thing to consider, once you gather both of those, you must go to the shipyard to assemble. And that can't be overstated because you have to look at your assembly tool. Everyone starts with the same tools, and so you will be rolling a 4-sided dice. So you have a 25% chance of failure, which initially in the game, failure earlier in the game is more devastating than failing towards the end of the game when you have your engine built up. And so the other thing you can take a look at is tool market of what does it cost to get an upgraded assembly tool. And so that's another strategy people utilize. And so you can see on the table here, we have 3 to pick from. They're all 3 different names, but you can just look at the tier number. And so this is the assembly tool tier 1, and we have 2 that are tier 2s. They ultimately do the same exact thing for each of the tiers. And so tier 1 for assembly tool lets you roll 6-sided dice, which would be better than rolling the 4-sided dice, and also allows you to have the chance of rolling exceptional quality. Or right now available is tier 2, which is 8-sided dice, which cost 4 gold for either one of those, which allows you to roll 8-sided dice. And then the last, the other strategy you can do besides buying assembly tool is buy metalworking and woodworking tools. And the reason, even though initially you don't need those tools to convert, you will need those rapidly, quickly to convert your raw into finished material. But the reason you might consider buying one, like this cabinet plane, it's a tier 3. It costs 3 gold, which you start off with the money to do that. But as you're covering up your handsaw, you then get to upgrade it, so you're gaining your 1 raw wood. So you're getting the same thing you would by going there to the sawmill. You're spending your gold, but you have a tool now you can utilize throughout the game, and it allows you to roll 10-sided dice. And so for blue, that's the strategy blue's going to take. It's going to grab the cabinet plane, which costs 3 gold, and so take their gold, just put it back in the pile over here. We're going to flip the next card over, and it gets its upgrade. So it gets 1 raw wood. The raw wood would not come from the sawmill because you're disassembling your old wood tool, so you get it from the side here, from the supply, and you put it on your raw wood spot. Now it's green's turn. Now green could do the same things. It wants to start with the apprentice most likely, unless, well, it would want to start there no matter what, because it doesn't want to use its shipwright and get a spot blocked off right away. And what green's going to do, it wants to get one of these assembly tool cards. If it doesn't have enough, and the new assembly tool card came out that costs 6, which allows you to roll 10-sided dice, they're going to go here to get the 2 gold. And so since you're the first one there and they're not a shipwright, they get the plus 2 gold. So they're going to take the plus 2 gold from supply here and put it on their player bat. So they have 5. Now it goes back to blue. We just keep going around so everyone is out of people. And there is a point where, say, a blue could upgrade to lead ballast first and end up with 3 workers while green still remains with 2 workers. You just keep going around until everyone's out before you go to the next round. And so now blue has no money. It does have a upgraded saw. It has 1 raw wood. And so blue is going to go to the sawmill to gain their raw wood. And so now they have 2. And so now they just need the metal at this point. Green, they have the 5 gold. They are going to take it a little easier, and they really want to get that assembly tool because they understand the importance of not failing early on assembling and setting you back. So they are going to go and get the plus 2 as well because they are a shipwright, so they ignore the worker placement and they get the plus 2 as well. So now that would end this round because everyone is out of people. So everyone gets their people back, their workers back. You then discard the card on this side and slide everything over. 1, and then you flip over. Another assembly 3 came out. And then you would look at replenishment rates. And so sawmill is allowed to have max 8. And it has 7 because blue took one of them. And so you would take one from supply over here and replenish it with that 1. No one took anything from the metal depot, so it already has its max of 6, so it doesn't get any replenishment. You can't replenish past the max. And so now, first player token would then slide over, and now it would be green's turn to go first. Green, again, going to start with the apprentice because they don't want to be blocked later. They have a ton of gold, but they don't have anything else. But they're going to go to the tool market and get that tier 3 assembly tool. So it's going to cost them 6, and they're going to get the frame caliper. And so they'll put their 6 gold back in supply, so they're left with 1. And they're going to be covering up their joiner's mallet, which gives them an upgrade of the single gold. So they'll get 1 gold back, and so now they're back at 2. Blue has no money, it needs 2 metal. It's going to take the apprentice to the metal depot to gain 1 raw. Back to green. So green has I forgot to flip over tool market. Green does have the best assembly tool, so at this point it needs to start gathering the material that's needed. So they have the 2 gold. They did see this tier 1 metalworking card come out, and I think they're going to jump on that. So they're going to have to go to the tool market. They're going to buy this for 2 gold, which they have. And as they cover it up, they get the 1 upgrade because they're covering up. It says 1 raw, which they don't get from the Metal Depot because they're disassembling their tool. They get it from supply, and they put it here. So with 2 gold, they were able to get the 1 raw metal and upgraded card, which will be beneficial for them as they go further and they're upgrading their engine. So now back to blue, and blue is going to go back to the Metal Depot, and they're able to do that because, again, shipwrights ignore worker placement. So only 1 worker is allowed to be there, but shipwrights ignore that, and so they're able to go back to the Metal Depot and get the raw metal. And so now blue has everything it needs, but the round is over, and so now same thing happens. Everyone gets back their workers. First round token slides over, and we are going to, and I think we did forget to flip over the market card. We're going to take the last one, put it in the discard, and then slide everything over. So now it is back to blue's turn. Blue has everything it needs to assemble its first component in the shipyard. And so there's 2 things blue could do at this point. It could try to go get money to buy one of these assembly cards so they have a better chance of assembling, or they can take the chance and go right to the shipyard. And blue is going to say, what the heck, and go right to the shipyard, take the chance. And so blue then would look at their assembly card, which is the normal tier 0 one that comes with it, the joiner's mallet. They have the dice tower here, and they have a 4-sided dice, which is red. They're going to chuck that in and see what number comes out. And blue got 3. And so the way that the dice that have in the playtest boxes, at least, you read them by whatever number is at the bottom, the one that makes sense, that looks correct, that's the number. So this one is 3. And so again, 1 is a failure, 3 through 5 normal, 6 and above is exceptional. So 3 performs the action as normal, which is fantastic for blue. And so blue will take one of their ship completion track pieces. They're going to cover up one of the spaces. They get the 1 gold as a reward, which they get from supply, and they get the extra worker. So they get the extra apprentice now that comes back to them. So now it's on to green. Oh, and let me backtrack real quick. What would have happened if blue would have got a 1? If blue would have rolled a 1, they would have lost one of the material. And so that's one thing I did just forget to do. They did spin their raw material, the 2 raw wood and 2 raw metal. This, again, does not go back to the sawmill and the Metal Depot. It goes back to supply, and so blue has to pay for that. But if they would have got a 1, they wouldn't have actually assembled the ship, and they would have just lost either 1 wood or 1 raw metal, and they would choose, which would force them to go acquire that raw material to continue on. And so that's just a couple rounds of what it looks like when you first start off, and then I'll set up maybe halfway through the game and show you what that looks like going forward. Alrighty, so I set the game up to be midway through the game. As you can tell on the ship completion track, both blue and green have made it up to the bulkheads, and so they have both traded in one of their apprentices for a shipwright, and so each of them have 2 shipwrights and 1 apprentice. You all see they're both neck and neck at the bulkhead, so the next thing they're both going after is the decking, which there's 4 options and only 1 allowed there per one. See, blue right now looks like 5 gold and 1 raw wood, where green has 4 gold and 2 raw metal. I threw some random tools on them, and we're gonna go from there. And so it looks like it's blue's turn. Blue needs to decide, they're 1 away from paying for the deck. They only get 1 gold, only worth 1 gold at the end. They can also do some pine decking, which costs 3 finished wood, worth 1 gold and 1 point at the end. Or they can get in some more expensive stuff with the teak decking or the cedar decking, both worth 3 gold and 3 points at the end. I think blue is wanting to go that route. We'll see how that works out. And so what they're going to do is blue needs wood. It wants wood, it has one already. It's going to go to the sawmill and put its worker there. The sawmill right now only has 4 units available. It has been upgraded in the past, and so someone in the game has, or maybe together, they've upgraded it. And so now every time a worker goes there, they get 2 raw wood. And so now we put 2 raw wood there, and now there's only 2 left within the sawmill. So kind of supply and demand, that is now a valuable resource together, because once it's out, it replenishes only 2, but only 2 per round. So now it's green's turn. Green is in the same boat, needs to progress. It already has the metal. The next decking only requires, the highest one only requires 2, next one up requires 1. And so I think green is going to go ahead and go to the metal foundry and process its 2 raw metal into finished metal. And so they're going to use the combination tool or the metal working tool. In this case, they don't have a combination tool, and so they have the metal working 3 card, which allows them to roll a 10-sided dice, and so that is what green's going to do. So if you read the card, it says process 3 raw metal into finished metal. It only has 2, but it can still process up to 3, and so it all works out. They could have went to the metal depot to get the additional 1 and then next round process, but green decided it wants to move up as quick as possible and not waste a turn doing that, or not use a turn doing that, and so it's going to process it. It's going to take a 10-sided dice, because that's what allows based on its tool, which is the blue one, and it's going to chuck it in, and it gets a 7. And so 7 is exceptional quality, and so they're going to turn their 2 raw metal, which again doesn't go back to the metal depot, it goes off to the supply, to gain 3 finished. So it got the 3 finished anyway, and go to the 3 finished spot. And so now it's on to blue's turn. Blue needs to convert that raw wood into finished wood, and so it's going to go over here to the woodworking workshop. And blue has a tier 3 woodworking tool as well, so it is a 10-sided dice that's listed there. And so that one says you can process 3 raw wood into finished wood, and so they'll be chancing all 3 of those and putting the 10-sided dice in. And it's a 2, so 2 still normal processes. So they'll take the 3 raw wood and convert that into 3 finished wood. If they would have rolled a 6 or higher, they would be converting the 3 raw wood into 4 raw wood. And if they would have rolled a 1, they would have the action wouldn't happen, and they would lose 1 of the 3 raw woods. And so they would be left with 2 raw woods, and they wouldn't perform that action at all. They would lose their turn. So now it's back to green. Green has what it needs in metal, but it needs wood. And it doesn't have wood. And so green could go here and go to the sawmill to get the last 2. The last 2 pieces. And that, I guess that is what green's going to do. Green's going to go here, get the last 2 raw woods, and so it has the last 2 raw woods. Back to blue. Blue has 5 and green has 4, so they have 9. They couldn't upgrade the sawmill, they're out of wood because they need 10. And so what blue is going to do is going to go get 2 more gold, so we can get up to 7. And then blue is going to tell green and ask if green will utilize its turn to do the building upgrade. Blue would be willing to help with that upgrade. And so they're going to talk through it. It costs 10. Green is spending one of their actions to do it, and so that has to cost something. And so what they're going to recommend is green is going to spend 4 of its gold to do the upgrade, while blue is going to spend 6 of its gold. And so now they've paid the 10 together as a table. They've collectively done it. And so now they have to figure out how they're going to split 4 gold and 3 raw wood. And so they would take this, they're just going to cover up that there. So I got the 4 wood, or excuse me, the 4 gold and 3 raw wood. And so now they're going to figure out, blue did pay more, but green did use their turn to actually perform the action. So they're going to take that into account. Green really wants the wood, so they're going to say they want the 2 wood and 2 of the gold, and they're going to give blue 1 of the wood and 2 of the gold. That was what they negotiated. And so now this is upgraded, and it automatically replenishes, so a max of 12. So you take 12 from over your supply, and you populate the sawmill. Two more. And so now the sawmill has 12 there, and if anyone goes there, they get 3 raw wood from there versus the 2. So it just keeps upgrading. Really, as you're a community within Shoreham by the Sea, you're upgrading your sawmill, the infrastructure in your community, because you're both shipbuilders within the community. So now that's end of the round, and so again, we're gonna, market is gonna go down and come over, just replace it by 1. Everyone gets their pieces back. First player slides over, and we do replenishment. So the metal depot has a max of 6, replenish of 1 has 4, and so you gain the 1. Sawmill, replenishment of 3, max of 12. We just upgraded, it has 12, no one's taking anything from it, so nothing happens there. And so now it's off the green. So now it's green's turn, and green needs to process the wood they just received. And so they're gonna take their small worker, put it on the woodworking workshop. They have a woodworking 3 tool, which is a 10-sided dice. And so they will roll that, and they got a 1. And so their tool allows them to process 3, so they'll lose 1 of their raw woods, and then they lose their turn. So it goes back over your supply, and that was their turn. And so I'm moving over to blue. They have the 3 finished wood, 1 raw wood, but no metal. They could right now go get the pine decking, but if they only get 1 raw metal, they are then allowed to get the teak decking, which is worth more points. And I think they are going to do that. So I'm just looking here at the tool market to see if they have enough money to buy, and that's Zazu. Alrighty, and we're back. I had to give Zazu some millet to calm him down a little bit. So let's see, where were we? Green just had a failure, so now it's off to blue. They need a raw metal so they can convert into finished metal, and they are deciding if they want to go right to the metal depot to gain their 1, which they could easily do. They can also go to the tool market to upgrade, or not even upgrade, I use the word upgrade, but they could downgrade or keep the tool the same to get the reward. So they right now have a metalworking 2 card with 8-sided dice. A draw hammer is for sale, and it is a tier 2 8-sided dice. So it's the same level card, so they are not going to gain any upgrade from a dice rolling effect. But what they would do is, as they're covering up their card in their player mat, they get the upgrade. So you can constantly upgrade or downgrade or stay the same to gain those upgrades and gain your raw material that way. But in this case, it costs 4. I think they only have 3 gold, and so they don't have enough gold. So they will use their small worker to go to the metal depot to gain the 1 raw metal. So now they are ready to go to try to process that next turn. So now it's back to green. Green needs to process that raw wood. It still has 3, so it's going to go right back to it and just sit and roll the 10-sided dice and hope not to get a 1. And they got a 5, and so it processes normally. So I'll take the 3 raw wood, put it back in supply, and then gain 3 finished. So now they have everything they need to do one of the upgrades on the board as well. They are going to go to, blues now need to process that, and they are going to go over to the metal foundry, which they have a 8-sided dice they can roll to process their metal. They also do have a combination tool, so combination tool, this one allows to roll a 6-sided dice, so in this case it is still better for them to roll the 8-sided dice here. So they're going to take that, roll it, and look, they got a 1 as well. Usually it doesn't happen that often, but they did get the 1, and so they would then lose their raw metal, and that's some of the chances you're taking when you're rolling. You're rolling the dice, but also just in normal woodworking and metalworking, there is the chance of having a quality issue. So now it's off the green. They have what they need, so they are going to go to the shipyard, and they have enough for the teak or the cedar decking. They're both the same points, but they're different material. And so they're going to look one above and see kind of what makes the best decision. And I think they're going to go with teak so they can save some of that finished metal for maybe the cedar decking next round. And so that's what they're going to do. They are going to claim that they're going to go to the teak decking. They have an assembly 3 card, which is a 10-sided dice, and they will roll that. And they got a 7. And so now they got a 7. They did get exceptional quality, so I'll take their green piece, put it for teak decking, pay the cost, which is the 3 finished wood and the 1 finished metal. They get 3 gold, but they get exceptional quality, so they get 1 additional, so now they get 4 gold. And at the end of the game, that will be worth 3. And so you just keep playing this way until the first person finishes their ship. And at that point, the round is allowed to go around the table. So the idea is everyone has equal turns at the end. Go around the table one more time until everyone has equal turns. And so I guess if the last player in that turn is the one that ends or completes their ship, the game is over. The idea is to make sure everyone has equal turns. And at that point, we'll do final scoring. So I'll pause here, get the game set up for final scoring, and I'll walk through final scoring. Alrighty, so now I have progressed the game to a final scoring condition. And so green did reach their first equal turns. Blue got to finish their turn. And so now we'll do final scoring. Scoring is made up of your ship completion track, your tools, and then leftover gold. Gold in your possession is worth a half a point per gold piece, and so every 2 gold equals 1 point. So we're first going to do the scoring here, and so we're going to quickly just count green up, and you can really take them off as you go. So again, you're counting the gold piece that you got, how much gold you got as you completed the track. That is the final scoring as well. And so green has 1, 3, 6, 10, 13, 16, 19, 21, 24. So I'm just going to write 24 for green up to the side, and we'll go for blue. So blue, it's 4, 7, 11, 14, 18, 22, 26. So right for blue, 26. And so that was just interesting. Depending on the way they went up, green actually finished the game and was the last one to get the rigging complete. But blue still got 26 points part of the track versus green's 24. So depending on their path, they scored differently there. And so the next thing we're going to do we'll do green first. We're going to take all their cards. The easiest way to do it is take all the cards. And then you'll count, again, the tier number, which you used to indicate what tier it was as you're doing it. It's also the point value at the end. So we got 6, 7, 10, 12. So green got 12. And then let's see what blue got from a tool point of view. So take all theirs. And it's the full stack again. It's not just the top cards, it's all the cards in the stack. And we're going to count the tier number. So 2, 5, 7, 9, 11, and they got 11. Blue got 11 on that. And then lastly, it's going to come down to gold. So we'll do green first. So every 2 is worth 1 point. And so green has 6 gold, so they will get 3 points for that. And blue has 3, so they're going to get 1.5 points. So we'll just quickly add these up real quick. All right, and this game ended up being very close. Green scored 39 and blue scored 38.5 is what it came down to. I don't think the scoring I just gave you is like a realistic what you would expect to see at the end of the game, because you would have more tools. I think the points should be a lot higher, but I was just throwing this together just to show you in around scoring. But at the end, whoever won the game based on the points. Hope this game made sense as you're going through it, and I welcome the feedback as the folks watching this are mainly going to be play testing. So again, really appreciate your guys' time and your time and dedication into giving feedback and hopefully making this game better. So really appreciate it. Thanks everyone.